Of course I know how to make Parmesan-crusted salmon. It'll be the best you've ever had. See you tonight.
You know you can't cook.
I know.
Even boiling water is a struggle for you.
I know.
What were you thinking?
I wasn't. What am I gonna do?
Oh, honey, just go for Grubhub and tell him the truth.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, it is. The food will arrive before he does, and he'll be so impressed with your ordering skills that all will be forgiven.
I think you're onto something.
I am. Go for date night deliciousness. Go for Grubhub. Download the Grubhub app today.
Hi there, I'm Zach Braff.
And I'm Donald Faison.
We're real-life best friends, but we met playing fake-life best friends, Turk and JD, on the sitcom Scrubs.
20 years later, we've decided to rewatch the series one episode at a time and put our memories into a podcast you can listen to at home.
We're going to get all our special guest friends like Sarah Chalk, John C. McGinley, Neil Flynn, Judy Reyes.
Show creator Bill Lawrence, editors, writers, and even prop masters will tell us about what inspired the series and how we became a family.
You can listen to the podcast Fake Doctors, Real Friends with Zach and Donald on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.
Hello there. YouTube Music is a new app that combines everything you expect from a streaming service with the magic of YouTube to bring everything to life. With YouTube Music Premium, you'll get ad-free music that plays with the screen off or while using other apps. Finally, so stoked. Get music wherever you want it, even if you're offline. Download the new YouTube Music app today and start a free 30-day trial. Then just pay $10 a month. Of course, terms and restrictions apply. YouTube Music is unbelievable. I love it. I love using it. You should too, okay? $10 a month. It's perfect. All right, now here's the show. Hi, hello, everybody. Welcome to 100 Words or Less, a podcast in which me, the host, Ray Harkins, talks to other people who are involved in independent music and the creation of it, or the consumption of it, or the documentation of it. I like to, try to change it up for those of you that listen to a week-to-week basis, because sometimes you get caught in a verbal rut, so to speak, and you do the same thing over and over and over. But anyways, the guest is Donovan Melero. He is the drummer/vocalist of a progressive post-hardcore band called Hail the Sun. The reason I sound like I'm questioning what I'm saying is that this band's hard to define. But Donovan is a hustler, and Hail the Sun is they're just a great band. Like, if you like musicianship, you should definitely check them out. They're putting out a record on Equal Vision called Mental Knife. Comes out September 28th. So basically in a couple of weeks, you can check it out. And I've heard the whole thing. It's really, really good. Full disclosure, the producer I manage, Bo Burchell, he did this whole record. So I got to watch it be built from the ground up. But it's very, very good. Removing my own personal attachment aside, it's a behemoth. So anyways, let's talk about Rockabilia. You knew that was coming, right? You got band merch. I'm wearing band merch as we speak. I pretty much wear band merch every single day of my life. And Rockabilia should be your outfitter of all band merch. Use the code PCJabberjaw, and that will get you 15% off your entire order, which is unbelievable. That's a pretty good deal. So do that, because they have 500,000 items, everything that you could possibly imagine from all of the bands that you are currently thinking of, even bands that you're probably like, I wonder if they have a super old band shirt from 15 years ago. And it's like, they probably do, because, maybe that band broke up and they're sitting on a few random t-shirts here or there. They have great customer service, fast shipping, everything you could possibly want from a good customer service company. That is what they do. I love Rockabilia so much. And thank you very much for their continued support of the show. I like it. It's such a logical sponsor of the show. It just makes me so happy. So rockabilia.com, PC Jabberjaw, 15% off. Boom, there you go. Here's some other announcements as well. If you are downloading this immediately, the Wednesday it comes out, the following night, September 20th, if you are in the Orange County area, you should come hang out at a venue called Riff Mountain. which is located in Fullerton. You can easily Google it and you'll be able to find the address. But yeah, I'm doing that whole like emo night DJ thing, except not in like the emo night that you're probably thinking of from a sort of glossy commercial perspective. But this is like, it's a warehouse space. We're hanging out with some people, playing some bands. I'm putting together my playlist right now, and it will be super fun. It's everything from, the classics of Jimmy Eat World and Promise Ring and that sort of stuff, all the way down to Anasarca and some other bands that people are going to be like, what is this? I don't even know what this is, but it will be super, super fun. So it starts at 8 o'clock. So please come out, Riff Mountain. I would like to hang out with you. And I'm going to buy some red vines. I'm going to hand out red vines to people. Because I think, isn't that what you're supposed to do as a DJ? I was like, yeah, that's a fun vibe. How about red vines? So anyways, it's that. And then October, I have hinted at it for a while, but I've locked everything down. I'm very excited. I'm going to be doing a special sort of series called Be Specific, which is basically an idea that I had a couple months ago in regards to, when people talk about the music industry and like, have music industry advice podcasts and all this other stuff that, all this content that kind of bubbles up around the music industry. A lot of it isn't very specific. A lot of it is talking about generalities, is talking about, my experience on this tour a long time ago or whatever. And I like all those discussions, but I just feel very passionate about diving deeper into the idea of like being specific. So I'll use an example where one of the guests on this series is Shane Told. He's the vocalist for Silverstein, and Silverstein, whether you like the band or you hate the band, they are a real band. They have made themselves a living out of it, and it's pretty spectacular from that perspective. Like just sheerly, like I said, if you do not like the band, you have to, give them props for like, hey, they've been able to figure this out. So, we talk about like, how much money they were doing in merch on a certain tour and like really, really specific stuff. But hopefully this will be a series that I'll continue to do. So basically the whole month of October, I've got all of these music industry people, friends of mine who are willing to be specific about this stuff and not just be, speaking in general terms. So I am looking very much forward to releasing those, and hopefully you find it interesting. So if you are into the music industry whatsoever, you'll probably find some value out of this. And I tend to not sort of music industry nerd it up on this show, but I just wanted to dedicate a whole month to it. So there you go. And I have an upcoming mailbag episode that will fit into that as well. So if you got any mailbag questions, email the show 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. There we go. That's all that. Okay, putting that aside, but you are very, very excited to hear this conversation with Donovan. He is just a sweet dude. He's been through it. He has battled addiction, had a lot of rough times in regards to that. And he is very open and honest when it comes to that. So it was a great discussion. Sometimes I just trip over my words. But anyways, here's Donovan, and I will talk to you after the episode is over.
Like all of a sudden your band just existed in my world. And, from booking the time in the studio, from, recording with Bo Burchell, the producer who I manage. And then, just being like, oh, wow, like you're on Equal Vision and like there's all this stuff. And in many respects, it's cool because then all of a sudden your band is like kind of more fully formed than, just being like your debut LP or whatever. Yeah. But I'm guessing that is a common experience with your band where people are like, "Oh yeah, you're new," but it's like, "Well, no, we've been around for like 8 years." Yeah,
exactly. And I think because we're just now coming to the surface for lots of people at a definitely more rapid rate, people do think that we are a new band. I've been told that a lot, and I guess in a way, to them we're a new band, but we've been touring since 2010. We formed in 2009. We've been going at it for a while now.
Yeah, I mean that's like legit 10 years.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. Like next year is going to be the 10-year mark from where our band was formed.
Right.
As the four of us who we are now.
And I do think that especially with pop culture in general, like, because we have the internet and because everybody's attention is so fractured across all of these different things from, music to movies to podcasts, whatever, that even though people are just getting into you, there's no real late to the party from that perspective, because then all of a sudden they're being able to consume a wide body of music from you guys. And it's not just limited to like, oh yeah, the 10-song LP we just released.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing I've been told is because people think we're a new band and then they go and dig up our discography, they have a lot to dive into and to keep them busy until we do put some new shit out.
Right. And do people, I guess kind of on the flip side of that, do people that, discover you, from your more recent recorded material dive back and are like, hey, your early stuff sucks? Like, because most bands' early stuff, is not as fully formed as what they're releasing now. I'm sure people don't just like commonly say that to you, but.
Right. We actually get a lot of the opposite. They're like, they love the earlier stuff. And our very first album, Power Right in the Kisser, it came out in 2010. We recorded it in the music studio at California State University, Chico. And we had our really good friends. One of my best friends, his name's Fernando Macias. He was the engineer of that album. And he was also the studio manager at Chico State University. So he would just kind of sneak us in when there were vacant time slots on the calendar. A lot of the time that was between midnight and 6 a.m. So over the course of, 2 months, we just sneak in and record our music there. And I'm very proud of it, but it's definitely not as a current sounding recording. There's no replacement of drums. There's no auto tune on vocals. It's very, very raw.
Right.
And, people still really like it. And that's what surprises me the most is I feel like a lot of common listeners, if the audio recording isn't fucking pristine, then they instantly gravitate towards not liking it.
Right.
But it's different with that one. I mean, it's not pristine recording, but people seem to really like it still. And I guess I'm stoked.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, because there definitely is that element of many people liking a band's earlier recorded output because it's more raw. Like you said, you're not you don't have any money, so you're spending $40 to record a record in like 2 days. And like. But then, it is interesting where it's like you look at, if something isn't recorded, like not even well, but just like appropriately, that record sounds dated in like 2 years, and like,
yeah.
And then plus like trying to, imbue meaning in a band. Like, if I played a hardcore kid, a hardcore record that came out in the mid 90s that sounded like it was, recorded in a trash can, you could be like, this band's really important and blah, 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 blah. But then you play it for them and they're like, yeah, but it sounds terrible. And you're like, well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
But that's interesting that you were that sort of shoestring aspect of recording on off times and stuff like that. That actually reminds me of, Henry Rollins and a lot of the Black Flag guys have, documented the fact that they were recording in pretty nice studios, but yeah, between the hours of like midnight and 7 a.m. because that was the only time that was available for the rates that they had or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And there's something about recording at night that I feel like I share this with a lot of my musician friends. We just love it. And being like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., I feel like some of the best ideas come out during that time frame. And the last 2 records we did, the last 3 actually were like daytime times, like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Right.
And it was weird initially trying to transfer my mindset and the creative mind, I guess, if you will, to a daytime setting. I was so used to doing vocals and drumming like in the middle of the night, stepping outside. It's kind of cool outside, smoking a cigarette and going back in and doing the same thing. It was really weird having to be the middle of the day and I'm just like sweating and out of breath recording an album. It took some getting used to.
Right. Well, that's like the, many people look at like a professional basketball player where it's like, they have to peak between the hours of like 7 to 10 p.m. because that's, usually when the games are. And so they're taking, naps at like 3 p.m. and like, you have to kind of tune your body. So the adjustment period of what you're talking about makes perfect sense because you're like, okay, well, technically I'm still, like on the show time of like being ready at for a 8 or 9 p.m. set time. But like, recording is different because I have to, I have to be up at a reasonable time and I can't sleep in until like noon or whatever.
Exactly. And my schedule for the last 4 years has already been, I got to be up before 10, preferably before 9 to start like a normal work day. So that's always been really tough to balance recording schedules that are in the daytime with the work.
Sure. Because you're on the hustle, booking and managing and everything like that, which we'll get to later. But I wanted to kind of laser point the focus on you specifically. I know the band and yourself kind of came up in Chino. Were you born and raised in not Chino? Sorry, Chico. Huge difference. Were you born and raised in Chico?
I was born in Ventura, California, and I only went to Chico State University for school, for college.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That's why'd you go to Chico? That's really random.
So I used to work at an Italian restaurant. Me and Eric both, we've known each other since the 3rd or 4th grade, dude. And we've been in bands together since the 6th grade.
Okay.
So we were working at this restaurant together in high school, and Eric just brought this pamphlet from a job fair, some shit he had at his high school that day. And it showed Chico State University having one of the best recording arts programs in the country. And I thought that was really appealing. At the time, I was recording bands all the time. I was recording our own band. Like that was my passion at that time. I thought I was going to be in the recording world. I just loved it so much. And that's what made me want to go to Chico, was it just had a fucking stellar recording program. So we took the 8-hour trip up north for an orientation to see if it was a school for us, and when we loved it.
That is so random because I had, I've lived in California for most of my life and have worked in and around the music industry. I had no idea that Chico had like a renowned or well-known recording program. That's crazy.
Yeah, it definitely surprised me, and not very many people did, but a lot of Chico graduates were going off and getting really good audio jobs in totally different fields,
right?
Or I guess a variety of fields, but it all had to do with audio and recording or something like that, live sound.
Wow,
it was killing.
Dude, okay, now that makes more sense. Okay, I see. Yeah, because it usually, Chico, it gets kind of lumped in to the idea of like, okay, you're going to be into, agriculture or like city planning. Like, there's a lot of like sort of trade jobs that come out of Chico, and
right.
I guess you could argue that recording music is a trade as well. But I just didn't think that I guess creative arts were fostered there.
Yeah, it definitely is more of an it's like I said, a big agriculture program and shit, but very huge art community. Especially they have a great theater program, and that's where John met his fiance, and she got a theater degree from Chico, but it's a very artsy type of school.
Got it. Okay, interesting. So being born and raised in Ventura, I'm very familiar with Ventura and that whole area. What was your family structure like growing up? Like mom and dad in the house, brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I grew up in the same house my whole life. My parents had just moved to their current house right before I was born, and I have an older brother, 2 sisters. They're always around. It's a pretty solid childhood. Like my parents had my older brother and sister. See, my brother's 8 years older than me. My sister is 6 years older than me. And then I came along. I believe I was a little accident,
right? Yeah.
And because of that, they decided to have my little sister, so I'd have a companion growing up. So that's the bait. That was something like I've always been real close with my siblings, especially my younger sister.
Yeah, that's really interesting that your parents then, because sometimes when a child comes along unexpectedly, they're like, okay, we're done. But the fact that they, doubled down and they're like, okay, Donovan needs a person to hang around with like that. I mean, that's really cool that they had the, I guess plan or vision to be like, okay, well, this is for the betterment of him, even though, we didn't expect to have two more technically.
Yeah, they definitely didn't expect that. It was like a gift. I like that.
Yeah, a gift, not an accident, a gift, Donovan.
Exactly.
And so, what did your parents do for a living and stuff like that?
My mom is a teacher. She's always been, we grew up, I guess the word I would use these days is very progressive type of household. I was around lots of different, they wanted to get us involved in many different cultures, mainly like the Indian, or I should say Native American stuff. Like we would go to powwows and shit from time to time. My mom worked really closely with a lot of, she's a teacher, a bilingual teacher. And she is this little, I shouldn't say little, she's a petite white woman who speaks perfect Spanish. And my dad is a very dark Mexican man who speaks Spanish as well. But my mom almost speaks better Spanish than he does.
Nice.
Constantly, I know, she's constantly teaching it. He came to the United States when he was 8 years old. And they met in Santa Barbara, actually.
Okay.
But my dad's a music teacher now as well, for like elementary to junior high school.
Nice.
And we went to school. Me and my younger sister went to school in Oxnard, California, where my mom was actually teaching at a school called Tierra Vista.
Okay.
So we were always around Spanish and that culture, that Mexican culture, because there's a big population of Mexicans in Oxnard. And my mom has always been an advocate for farm workers' rights and just basic humanity rights, actually, in general.
Sure.
And so at the time when we first moved schools, I was at an elementary school in Ventura, and they transferred us to Oxnard. I was super bitter about it because the school in Ventura was really nice. They just built this huge playground. It was way close to our house. But my mom really wanted us to go to school in more of a cultural environment. And I'm really glad that she did do that, because I grew to like that a lot more and come to appreciate the things I had a lot more as well, because there's a lot of less fortunate kids at that school and the schools that I went to in Oxnard.
Right.
So I was able to really appreciate what we did have, especially later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once you have the perspective and you've been out in the world, you're like, oh, wow, that actually was valuable, that I didn't just attend a very, monoculture high school where it was just like, oh yeah, like 98%, white or 98% Hispanic. It's like, oh yeah, like there's a predominant, racial makeup of most schools, but like you got to sprinkle it in with other kids, because otherwise, yeah, you're just having this really myopic experience and not knowing what anybody else is experiencing besides your other white or Hispanic or, insert race here neighbors. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool that your parents were, they had the foresight to kind of do that. And I also really like the fact too that, the narrative that most people have in regards to, how their families, got together and how their mom and dad met and all that sort of stuff. But then also the immigration story of like, oh yeah, my dad came over when I was 8. And like, I always think that's really, powerful, to have that narrative in kids' heads, because, sometimes maybe parents don't openly speak about that for one reason or another. But it's cool that that's clearly part of your context and heritage.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you say, I may have fucked that up, but he came over when he was 8.
Not when you were 8. No, when he was 8. Yes. Exactly.
Gotcha.
But still, like that like very hard fact of like, oh yes, he came over when he was 8 years old. It's just cool.
Yeah, definitely. And he learned English just while he was here. He had to go to these English schools right away. Didn't know a fucking single word of English, and has some pretty funny stories of times he was trying to learn it with the kids around, but he did, and now they actually both speak fluent French too.
Oh, they're very multicultural. That's cool.
Yeah, they really are, and I was glad to be in a household where, from a very young age, they would instill in us the idea of equality and not judging someone by the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or shit like that.
Right. No, totally. That's super cool. So, as you started to, grow up and become kind of, your own person, own interests and stuff like that, how did, independent music kind of start to, tickle your fancy? Clearly you were raised in a musical household, but how did the stuff that your parents probably didn't understand start to come into your radar?
Well, I started first just really getting obsessed with music when I got into Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And that was back when I was, 5 to 9 years old. I was obsessed with that oldie style of music. And after that, started listening more to what my older brother was listening to. He liked a lot of punk music, like underground punk and crush shit. Bands like Crass. One of my favorite bands still to this day, punk bands, is Rudimentary Peni. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
Oh yeah. No,
it sounds like you are.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, it's cool. I just really enjoy when people have these disparate influences, like the stuff you're getting into, but then the stuff that, your brother's into that, clearly that band existed in the late 70s, early 80s. It's not like you would have an access point for that unless someone didn't recommend it to you. It's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And he was growing up in the same household, and I would hear him play Rudimentary Peni, and I love those songs so much. They're so fucking weird. And that's when I realized I definitely liked stuff that was a little more weird, a little out there, a lot. It didn't sound, I guess, just like the shit on the radio, which I still liked. Then got into bands like NoFX, The Offspring, huge on punk. All I did was play punk beats on drums. I did not know how to play any other beat except for the
classic. That's all you need, dude. That's all you need.
3 years, that's all I fucking played. It was actually my high school band that Eric was in.
Okay. That
we started to explore different genres, and I had to learn beats that were not just punk beats. But the NoFX Offspring era was something that was huge and very, very influential on harmonies. The fucking Fat Mike is just a genius with sculpting these fucking great harmonies and having punk songs that weren't just verse, chorus. And I realized that, you can do that. And then started checking out bands like Boys Night Out and the Number 12 Looks Like You, Follow Troy, all these bands that were just pushing the boundaries, I guess. And when I first heard some Boys Night Out shit in high school, it was the first thing I thought of was these sound like death metal lyrics, but they're sung like the most happy pop song shit ever.
Right.
And I realized you can do that. You can, if I want, I can put some really dark type of lyric or lyricism in very
iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild present Bridgewater Season 2.
A lot of people now actually believe that there is some kind of mystical force in this region that attracts monsters and paranormal activity.
The Bridgewater Triangle. Now that sounds about right.
You're still denying that there's something beyond our understanding going on here?
Starring Supernatural's Misha Collins, The Walking Dead's Melissa Ponzio, and Rogue One's Alan Tudyk. Written by Lauren Shippen and created by me, Aaron Mahnke.
Something about all of this doesn't feel right.
Hello? Is someone there?
Something went wrong here.
Olivia, we should hurry.
We have a much bigger problem.
What is that?
Olivia, run!
Listen to Bridgewater now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And learn more over at grimandmild.com/Bridgewater.
What's up? It's Angela Yee, and I want to tell you about my podcast, Lip Service. I created Lip Service as a safe space for women to talk about whatever they want to when it comes to the bedroom with no judgment. Lip Service means fun conversations and the freedom to talk about whatever you want. Lip Service is the one place where you can hear artists talk about the intimate details of their life and subjects that you might not hear anywhere else. It's where Nick Cannon felt safe enough to open up about some controversial topics with his love life.
The stork is on the way. You know, there's a lot of kids last year.
Oh my God. Also, Lizzo sat down and discussed dating. This was before she was in a relationship.
Oh, we never spoke after that, though.
We want to know why.
Okay, listen.
And even Cardi B came on recently, where she had a great time talking about life before her marriage to Offset.
I thought you wanted a bad and bougie. You got a bad and ghetto.
Make sure you check out my podcast, Lip Service, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do you crave a good mystery? Tune in to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio podcast, featuring episodes of different detective dramas from the golden age of radio every day, Monday through Saturday. The lineup of radio detectives currently includes Sam Spade, Dr. Tim Detective, Dangerous Assignment, Philo Vance, yours truly Johnny Dollar, and Tales of the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Adam Graham, and I offer commentary and humor after each episode, and also respond to your questions and feedback. Enjoy a good mystery before bed, while driving, or whenever you crave old school radio goodness. Listen to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Happy sounding songs. I thought that was fucking awesome. But my parents definitely weren't, they didn't quite get the scream, as they would say, the screamy shit.
Right.
Like my junior to senior year. And they kept saying, it would piss me off so much, but they'd always say it was a phase. They still come to all of our shows. I played in a metalcore band because of this, and a death metal band. I was the drummer, both those bands. And they'd still come to our shows. They were so supportive, but they always would just say it was a phase, screamy music phase, and I fucking hated that so much. But they were right. They were definitely right. It was for me. I didn't continue on into like a metalcore or death metal future.
In a world where everyone is confined to their homes, society begins its largest binge watch to date. In the hallowed library of Hulu, or perhaps on a shelf of DVDs you haven't looked at in a decade, is a show that perfectly encapsulates life in the early aughts and launched a friendship that would inspire millions. Hi, I'm Zach Braff.
And I'm Donald Faison.
In 2001, we starred in Scrubs, a sitcom that revealed a glimpse of what it was like to survive a medical internship. As Turk and JD, we explored guy love.
Nearly 20 years later, a lot has changed. We're not Supermen, but we're still best friends. Given the mandatory lockdown, there's no better time to relive the series that brought us together in the first place. And we're doing it with a podcast.
That's right, people. We're going to bring friends and crew members and fellow cast members and writers. And guess what? We're going to even invite some of you to call into the podcast and ask all the questions you want of the entire Sacred Heart staff.
Join us for Fake Doctors, Real Friends on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, well, I mean, you still like it, but you just didn't pursue it from a musical
exactly.
creation.
Yeah. That's a lot. A better wording.
Yeah, no, but that's I mean, it's cool because I think that there's a few things you said in there that were really reflective over. I think most kids that start to create their own music and start to be influenced by all these different things is once you feel like you can like stretch your wings and start to put different styles together, and like even though you're doing it terribly because you're only 16 or 17 years old, you're still experimenting with it, where you're like, oh yeah, like we can do we can throw these weird things in a blender, and then I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll try it at least, and then you start to feel like you're actually writing a song or something like that.
Yeah, exactly, man. And actually, one of the first albums I listened to that I had the aha moment, like I can't believe this band's doing this, was Between the Buried and Me, Alaska in high school. And that's when they really blew up, and everyone at school was talking about Between the Buried and Me and then the Alaska album. And it was very cool because it started the beginning of, for me, from what I was noticing, a beginning of musicality appreciation amongst very young kids. They just loved how versatile Between the Buried and Me is, and they're fucking great musicians. They have to know how to play their instruments, and that was something that was really cool to see. Like, okay, these talented dudes are getting recognition, and this music that does require talent and skill to play it can be appreciated on a bigger scale.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like because most people, regardless of genre of music, they don't look at the most popular artists and say, oh, they are the most talented, so I see why they're the most popular. Like, yes, you can argue that there are certain bands that are popular because they are so technically proficient. But yeah, most of the time, credit isn't due to the person who, shreds the hardest or combines the most musical genres. But yeah, that's cool that you started to recognize, like, oh, yes, like, there is, I'm glad that talent is being paid attention to in our little, musical world or whatever.
Exactly, man. And this is sort of an aside, but when you were saying that, it reminded me of, like, I think of bands 40 plus years ago, even 30 plus years ago, to tour, to create albums, to be a very successful, iconic musician. You actually had to be good. You had to be good.
Yeah.
Only good bands were touring. Only good bands were getting signed. There was talent there. And it transferred over into this age of, you can have a lot of really successful musicians and performers who may have not had a fucking chance 40 years ago, but now with the way that we're able to craft songs and computers and stuff, it's not wrong. I'm not talking shit about this. I just trip out on it sometimes, thinking how the bigger bands of like the 60s and 70s and 80s were actually really talented. They had to fucking be good live in the studio. There was no fixing up of rhythm or like a drummer had to be so good to just keep stay in the pocket. You couldn't bump it really. No. You couldn't time correct it. And that's just, it's really crazy to think about. Anyway, I saw that with the drum videos of Alaska and I forget his name. Blake, yes. Seeing Blake play these songs in the studio, and it was still so perfect. I was just blown away, and I thought, man, I really want to get better at my instrument, because these guys are killing it, and it's very possible. It seemed within reach.
That's cool. I definitely like that tangent, because it is. You can't put Beat Detective on, these 70s records that came out. And then, yes, it's like there are bands that, get up on stage that have a difficult time, tuning their guitar. And you're like, dude, it's like, whoa, that is wild. Like, really? Like, you should at least have some semblance of how to do these things. But, I think those are the easy bands to take shots at, where you're like, dude, just play, could you play 70% of your songs, maybe? Maybe? I don't know. But yeah. And so it sounded like, drums were kind of the initial instrument for you. Why did you, I guess, gravitate towards that more so than, guitar? I mean, I know you play guitar as well, but, was drums kind of always the love of your life?
I can't pinpoint the moment, but I know when I was 5 years old, my parents, bless their hearts and their ears, bought me a drum set for my birthday, and they put it upstairs in my brother's room for me to play. And my brother actually would make me, I think at times I didn't want it. He'd come in and just tell me to play, and I would just hit a bunch of random shit over and over again. And then he started telling me, he said, okay, now just start playing, hit the hi-hat 4 times, and then every 2 and 4 time hit the snare drum. And I would just practice that for hours. Starting in 5th, 6th grade, and I picked it up really quickly and started being able to play a bunch of different types of beats at a very young age. And I think my whole family realized, okay, he's definitely a drummer, because my dad's a keyboardist. It runs in my family, especially on my dad's side. My brother is also a drummer and a guitarist. And drums, I don't know why my parents got me a set. I think they had a feeling maybe I would be a good drummer, so they got me started really fucking early. Yeah, and I've been playing since then. Like
you said, bless their hearts, because most parents are like, yo, drums, we can handle any other instrument, but just drums, where it's going to be the loudest thing at all times. So that's
what I mean, dude. They put up with that shit, and then 3 years later, they upgraded my drum set, because the first one I had was literally a paper drum set. The skins were paper. And then I got a real drum set, but it was still a child drum set, very small.
Sure.
when I was in second grade, and I used that one up until seventh grade maybe, and I inherited my uncle's drum set. That was the Tama, a very old Tama. We still have it. It's like from the 80s. A very old Tama set that I would use. But they never I thank them now in my old age, in my older age, but they've never once told me not to play. Like I was playing all the time at night. They'd come home from work and I'd be playing for a couple hours still, but they never, I could tell they were tired too and probably had headaches, but they didn't tell me to stop.
Yeah.
They let me jam on. They encouraged it.
I think that's the sign of a good parent, because I mean, I have a 7-year-old kid, and it's one of those things where the one thing I focus on is where it's like, I don't know when he's going to find the things that he's going to care about the most, but once he does, and once he expresses interest, like, honestly, no matter what it is, as long as it's not destructive, where it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like you're super into beating people up. Like clearly I'm not going to support that. But, yeah, you just have to find what your kid's into and then support it in the best way you can and not snuff it out, even though you may not understand it. You know, it's like, you gotta support it.
That's great, dude. It makes me really happy to hear. I completely agree.
Yeah.
For my future children, as long as it's not destructive or causing anyone harm.
Right.
I'll be there.
Right. Yeah. It's like, and especially too, as a parent, you will 100% not understand probably what it is they're getting into. Or it's like, whatever, kids super into video games, and it's like, oh yeah, video games will rot your brain. And it's like, well, that's what my parents said when I was playing video games. And it's like, look where it is now. It's like, yeah, I think you might have been wrong on that fix, but I digress. Something I want to hit on was, you've been really, open about your drug abuse and your self-esteem issues that, basically led to your drug abuse. That's something that I think is, I mean, first of all, it's great that you put that out there, because clearly it makes other people feel less alone because you do that. But the idea that, in Ventura and the Santa Barbara area, like as in most areas, there are a lot of drug abuse problems, and it kind of becomes pervasive, where some kids, like if you have an addictive personality, you're almost set up for failure like that. The moment it gets introduced to you, and it's this mixture of like, I don't really think I'm valuable, yet there's this thing that kind of lets me escape my body. So of course I'm going to do it. Now that you've been, sober for a couple of years now, it's since 2010, am I correct? Or is it later?
2009.
2009. Okay, cool. Is it one of those things that you, I guess, reflect on it often, like your sobriety, or is it something that is kind of just like who you are now?
It definitely feels like a part of who I am. I don't just identify as that, obviously, but without that, nothing like that I've done or accomplished would have been possible. I'm certain of it because of where I was at right before I did get clean. And I'll still draw parallels just in everyday situations about the type of personality I have, and the addictive personality rather, and the way that I may have behaved in the past. And I realize I'll think of, like, for instance, when I was in 8th grade, we were at a friend's barbecue down the street, and we stole a couple beers, and I hid them in my room for like 2 weeks. I forgot they were fucking there, honestly, and I didn't even like beer, but we just took them because it was something to do. Like, we were kids, or we were 8th graders. One day, my dad's upstairs making my bed when I'm not home, and he finds them. And that night, I come home from a friend's house, and my parents have the most stern talking to. And my mom was telling me how my dad what was even cried a little bit when he found those. And I was 8th grade, like tripping out. Like I was being a dick too, I'm sure. I was just like, why? Like, I'm sorry, that just beer though. Like I didn't even plan on drinking them, but they seemed to make such a big deal about it. And I did not understand it. And they kept saying, like, you probably don't quite understand, but you're more at risk for this being a problem in the future. Your brother has it, your dad has had it, or has it, and I didn't quite get it. And that was something I realized in my sobriety. I think back to that time and thought, holy shit, they saw it. They saw that was a very scary thing for them, because another one of their children had already opened that can of worms, and where almost every male on my dad's side has gone through that. So I was definitely predisposed, and they saw it. And I remember when I thought about that, it tripped me out, because they were right. They were totally right to be so upset with just finding beer. Like in my head at the time, it was just like, I'm just a kid having fun.
Right.
But I definitely didn't get to the full extent what they meant.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because all you're looking at is like, this is this little thing, like, leave me alone, suppressive parents, like just chill out, But then, yeah, you're not carrying around the, 20, 25 years of perspective that they have. And like, yeah, only as you get a little older and, like you said, have the sobriety behind you where it's like, oh yeah, I see why they made a big deal of those 2 beers,
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And the way that I lived my life following that from, the age of 16, 17, all the way to 20, it took a couple of years to get used to not living that way. And now there's times where I almost don't remember what it feels like to be high or drunk or hungover almost, I guess, or dope sick.
Yeah.
But I'm almost afraid to fully forget, because those are just really good reminders of why not to do it. And it's just been, the type of person that I am, I can't quite figure out exactly how I'm trying to word what I'm trying to say.
It's okay.
I do relate a lot to, like, I try not to deviate too far from a recovery type of mindset. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Sure. I'm always in that and appreciating that I wouldn't have what I have if it wasn't for getting clean 9 years ago.
Yeah. No, that's a very, that's a real thing for a person like yourself who, like, genetically is just, is disposed to this. And like you said, you've been through it, you've felt that. And as humans, we have the ability, good or bad, to be able to forget the bad stuff that happens in our lives. It's like, we have the ability to kind of put that in the rear view, with elements of trauma that are attached to it, but we do have the ability to forget stuff. And so, yeah, you kind of keeping those feelings, at an arm's length is a important reminder for you to be, like you said, not fall back into it, because like, oh, it's actually not that bad. And then you're like, oh wait, what am I talking about? That was terrible.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And there's been times where I have hit those points where I've never come close, but I felt like, was it really that bad? Like, I might be able to fuck around with a beer here and there, and that may very well be true. It really, maybe I could, but just why even risk it? I've seen what that's done to friends. I've seen what that's done to people who helped me get clean. Like, just why risk it? It's not worth it to me. And that's just me. There's people that can drink and party and even use hard drugs for fun and keep it at that level. They never get into the addiction part. They maintain the abuse part and can be like, I don't feel like doing coke today. Like, I had way too crazy of a night. Not advocating for coke, but you know what I mean.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Well, I think no matter what, like, I don't care who you are, it catches up to you in some capacity, whether it's your health, whether it's like relationships, like. There are probably very few people that, yes, you can accumulate these experiences and be like, oh.
iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild present Bridgewater Season 2.
A lot of people now actually believe that there is some kind of mystical force in this region that attracts monsters and paranormal activity.
The Bridgewater Triangle. Now that sounds about right.
You're still denying that there's something beyond our understanding going on here?
Starring Supernatural's Misha Collins, The Walking Dead's Melissa Ponzio, and Rogue One's Alan Tudyk. Written by Lauren Shippen and created by me, Aaron Mahnke.
Something about all of this doesn't feel right.
Hello? Is someone there?
Something went wrong here.
Olivia, we should hurry.
We have a much bigger problem.
What is that?
Olivia, run!
Listen to Bridgewater now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And learn more over at grimandmild.com/Bridgewater.
What's up? It's Angela Yee, and I want to tell you about my podcast, Lip Service. I created Lip Service as a safe space for women to talk about whatever they want to when it comes to the bedroom with no judgment. Lip Service means fun conversations and the freedom to talk about whatever you want. Lip Service is the one place where you can hear artists talk about the intimate details of their life and subjects that you might not hear anywhere else. It's where Nick Cannon felt safe enough to open up about some controversial topics with his love life.
The stork is on the way. You know, there's a lot of kids last year.
Oh my God. Also, Lizzo sat down and discussed dating. This was before she was in a relationship.
Oh, we never spoke after that, though.
We want to know why.
Okay, listen.
And even Cardi B came on recently, where she had a great time talking about life before her marriage to Offset.
I thought you wanted a bad and bougie. You got a bad and got a...
Make sure you check out my podcast, Lip Service, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do you crave a good mystery? Tune in to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio podcast, featuring episodes of different detective dramas from the golden age of radio every day, Monday through Saturday. The lineup of radio detectives currently includes Sam Spade, Dr. Tim Detective, Dangerous Assignment, Philo Vance, yours truly Johnny Dollar, and Tales of the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Adam Graham, and I offer commentary and humor after each episode, and also respond to your questions and feedback. Enjoy a good mystery before bed, while driving, or whenever you crave old-school radio goodness. Listen to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Dude, I lived like crazy lifestyle for like 10 years or whatever. But then, you know, they don't have the ability to recall all of the, you know, just the people they've heard. Cause it's like, you know, whatever. If people look at like Keith Richards and are like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe he's alive. Like it's the amount of drugs that he has done and, you know, everything else that he has put in his body. Why is he still here? But then, you know, there's no way that you can look at the, you know, litany of people that he's undoubtedly hurt because of his abuse. And that's like,
yeah. And
those are the things where it's like, you know, people don't stop to consider that, you know, like, especially when you mythologize, you know, drug use and abuse and stuff like that. So yeah.
That's such an interesting point. I've actually never even thought of it that way myself. Is that dude's probably hurt a lot of people, and anyone like him has gone through that and hurt other people, and we don't really see that those outcomes and the other lives that have been affected aren't in the spotlight because they're not famous.
Yeah, totally. And it's like the having, you know, the clarity that you have now of like what your, you know, how much better your life is away from that. It does give you the ability to be like, oh yeah, like why would I trade my, you know, sobriety in my life for, you know, these things that are, you know, whatever, fleeting, and these experiences. It's like I could still experience all this stuff. It's not like I'm missing out because I'm not consuming these things or whatever. But yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I'm coming at it from I'm straight edge. I'm 37 years old, so like I'm completely on board with what you're saying. But I just you know, I do feel very strongly when I see people like yourself being able to share their story, because I do think that it's powerful to be like, yeah, like I'm cool and I'm functional and like I just don't need this stuff, you know? And it's like you said, it's not for everybody, but yeah, it's cool.
I am so incredibly excited to tell you about this week's sponsor, and they are Green Chef. What are they? They are a USDA certified organic company that includes everything you need to easily cook delicious meals that you can feel good about. They give you step-by-step instructions. They walk you through it. It's awesome. And they have a ton of different meal plans, including paleo, vegan, vegetarian, keto, gluten-free, omnivore, and carnivore. And their expert chefs design recipes, thoughtfully sourced ingredients, and gourmet flavor that you only find usually in restaurants. And dinner should be planned around your life and not the other way around. So let Green Chef take all that work off your plate as far as meal planning and shopping and prep for you week after week. You can switch up your meal plan and change the box you're getting whenever you want. I love this so much. So I'm vegan. My wife's vegetarian. Sometimes it's hard to find that sweet spot where we're both like, yo, this is really good stuff. We had a chickpea salad that was unbelievable. But my personal favorite, we had a corn chowder with some basil pesto that absolutely blew my mind. It's so great. They come in these little, you know, plastic baggies that you're able to recycle, and it's got all the ingredients. It's so easy. I am not a cook. I am frankly pretty terrible at it, but I can follow directions, and I made every single one of these meals for my wife, and she was like, wow, you're awesome. And I'm like, I'm not. Green Chef is awesome. It's making me look awesome. So please go to greenchef.us/words and you get $50 off your first box. That's greenchef.us/words. Okay. There is no reason that you shouldn't try this. They've got a ton of options, and the vegan meals are so good. I can't recommend them enough. Okay. greenchef.us/words, $50 off. Do it up.
You've always struck me just from an outside observer, like you're a very driven person where, clearly you're hustling the band, and, you've booked many bands, and you continue to be involved in the music industry in a very formal capacity. And that's always something that it seems like you've done because of your band, where you're like, okay, I guess I'll be the one booking shows and stuff like that. And, sometimes like that, that doesn't correlate to, usually the drummer isn't like the business person of the band or whatever, it's usually like, oh yeah, it's like the guitarist or the singer. Like that's kind of the default thing. So where in your mind does that kind of hustle come from? Like, is that just something you kind of always had? Like, I presume your parents obviously instilled a bit of that in you. Have you ever kind of thought of that?
I have, and they definitely instilled working hard, but I can actually relate that also to getting sober. Is when I was actively using, I never had money, and I'd make decent tips and shit at the pizza spot I worked at, but I just never had money. I was always spending on bullshit and forgetting about it. And when I first got clean, I started taking, and still to this day, insanely detailed notes of every dime I made and every dollar I spent, no matter what, cash, debit card. I kept detailed because I was so sick of not knowing where my money was going in my years of using. And that kind of led to this obsessiveness of being very organized. So when the band started doing more touring and more stuff like that, I think it was a more natural segue for me to then turn my drive of wanting to get drugs or do things that were bad for me, turning that into obsessing on shit that was good for me and that would move me forward. And also I was super untrustworthy, dishonest when I was using. I wasn't really reliable, and I hated that. I hated once I got clean that I had been that way, and I felt like I had something to prove, and I wanted to be the opposite. I wanted to be able to be super trustworthy, very honest, someone that had it all together. Like I looked up to people who were in my same classes, who just always seemed to deal with pressure fine, and no matter what, even if they didn't have the answer, they would. I still felt like it was more of a I don't know yet, but let me get back to you type of mentality. And I loved that. I envied it. And I could never hit that though when I was living an unhealthy lifestyle. So once I got clean, I decided I was going to turn all of my focus that may have gone towards bullshit into just moving forward and trying to be someone that people could count on, and someone that could I guess could produce, could get something done and be very reliable. I guess that's where it kind of comes from.
Dude, that's rad. I love that. I mean, because it like when you have an addictive personality and you start to remove those things that you are addicted to, people have a tough time funneling their energy into, usually you see people get super into religion or, smoke like 40 packs a day, which, it sounds like you smoke and that's fine. But but like, you got to focus your energy somewhere. And it's cool that you were able to, focus it on something that, was so positive and like you said, just kind of learning things that will ultimately help your band because of the fact that you were trying to, focus your attention to something positive as opposed to, getting swallowed up by something negative.
Totally, dude. And I do appreciate that. And there were small things that would move me along where I realized, holy shit, I was able to save this amount of money and that it wasn't even that hard. Like, why couldn't I have done this before? And then, so that was really, it was really encouraging. And then when we booked our very first tour, like I sat down, we all had a part in the first one, but the like second and third one kind of fell more on me because I could just get it done quicker.
Right.
And I learned if I wanted something done right, I really had to do it myself. And that's still, done to, I shouldn't say that. I don't.
No, done your way, what you feel is the best way to do things.
Exactly. And I still oversee, I have to be involved with everything that involves my business, any type of business I'm involved with, and the music that we're writing. But I'd book our second or third tours and look at it and think like we did it. We pulled that off. It wasn't as hard as we thought in the end, and it was very rewarding. And shit like that helped to provide me with a mindset of if I want it, if I can dream it, as cliche as it sounds, I think I can do it. I'm just going to go for it no matter what. Because the worst that can happen is it just doesn't happen, but then we try.
Right.
And we've consistently done that more and more. And I got into this like self-help type of phase of my life maybe a year and a half ago where I still practice, positive mindset, positive self-thinking, and wrote down a list of goals and timeline for those goals and like studied them and just looked at them and almost try to dream them into existence. And some of them started happening almost immediately, dude. It was such a trip, and it made me even more so think like nothing is impossible short of me. I'm not going to step out on the roof and grow wings and fly.
Sure.
But if something can be worked towards a goal, then the only thing that's going to stop it from happening is me. I'm the only person that's going to fuck it up or get in my own way. And like coming from a place 12 years ago where I was jumping off my parents' roof into, I kid you not, a trash can full of water because it just rained, lawnmower grass and dog shit, jumping off that to sneak out as the water pours all over me when I fall, to now it's like I've been able to see that it is possible. I don't have to live a way I don't want to live, and anything's really achievable as long as we're going at it very, very focused. And even in high pressure moments or times where I might not have the answer, I like to remain cool about it, because I think it's really important to those around me as well, who I'm working with, that we don't lose sight of the goal and don't lose control and don't freak out. Just realize, okay, we might not know what's going to happen next, but don't worry, I'll take care of it. That type of mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really cool. It's definitely, the best way to approach things. And I think that the people that become interested in the sort of the business side of the band, and like, I mean, because most of these things are like, when you reflect on a booking agent's job, like you could not have a more thankless job. Like, I don't care. Like, honestly, because it's like no one shows up at a concert and is like in the back of their head, you know what? I'm really glad the booking agent put this here. Like, no, literally zero people think that, but people like you and I who have booked our own tours and done that sort of stuff, where it's like, if we go to an event that's like, somewhat impressive, it's like, damn, dude, someone like pulled this. This is rad. Like, way to go. It's like, I always think that. I'm just always like, that's amazing. I can't believe that occurred. That's cool. Like, it's so hard.
Yeah, dude.
It's so hard to do.
I'm the same way. I love appreciating the behind the scenes factors of everything. It definitely has opened up my mind even more to think of really in any everyday occurrence, even the county fair that's happening right now. The planning that goes into that is fucking crazy. I'm sure it's. I totally love that so much.
It's insane. Totally. And then it's funny too, because I'm sure you do this like often, where if you look at something that's like, like the fair, where you're like, oh yeah, like, that, like that, I can't believe that's amazing. They have all these things here, but then you look at ways that they can improve. You're like, oh man, their merch could be better. Like,
Yeah.
Like, you just,
I will seriously think that shit too.
Of course, anybody that does that, it's like, oh man, I wish I could talk to the person responsible for this, because I'm sure I can help them in some capacity.
Exactly, and not like I really try not to be like, man, why the fuck did they do this? This is fucking whack. Like, I could do a way better job.
Yeah.
Not like that. More like, I wonder what the thinking was behind this and why they didn't do it this way. Because I feel like the latter of those thoughts is a lot more productive. And less, like, nothing's going to get done if I'm approaching things that way. It's got to be like, okay, what can we do here to change this for the better? But I try to even practice my own thoughts in that manner to be less abrasive and more. I
want to be helpful, right? Yeah, totally. Last couple things I want to hit on was I don't think I could look anywhere on the internet that is written about you and Hail the Sun that people aren't like, oh, Donovan, dude, it's crazy. He plays drums and he sings. It's so wild. Like, it's the piece writes itself. Like, even though you've been a band for so many years, and like this shouldn't be surprising anymore. But as you started to do that and start to develop the chops of being able to do both of those things, because clearly drumming is one of the most difficult things from a fatigue perspective when you're on stage.
Yeah.
Like, walk me through like some of the times as you started to do that, where you were just like, was it harder for you to like, to do the singing side of things, or was it harder for you to be like, all right, I completely lost where I was because I was singing this part so well, or whatever? Like, what was I guess the pieces that were missing, and how are you failing miserably before you actually started to feel like you had a sense of it?
Well, I'm very fortunate in the sense that it's always been way more natural than it has unnatural for me to drum and sing. And the way it just started happening was me and Eric, once again, would be jamming in my garage in high school after class. And we didn't have a singer or a drummer to really play with. So I would just do both. Just out of necessity, we'd cover all these band songs, and I would just drum and sing because that's what we needed at the time while he was playing guitar. Yeah, exactly. And I realized I could do it, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe this is like, we should really capitalize on this. In fact, not many people know, in the very early years of Hail the Sun, I was still, of course, the drummer and writing on drums, and Eric was on guitar. But we've had months where in 2009, I was playing bass for about 6 months, maybe playing bass and singing. And we had a drummer who jammed with us for that time frame. And then when we got a bassist, I ended up playing second guitar. And I was playing second guitar for about 6 months to a year with Hail the Sun while we had the same drummer who was jamming out, like just for home gigs and shit like that. I would still always write on the drums. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of came full circle. We found Shane, and we all went to college, or went back to college, and the drummer lived in SoCal. So I just started playing drums again and singing. So I realized I could do it, but when I would hear live recordings, I realized I just couldn't do it very well yet. And it was mostly the singing. The drums, I mean, my tempos have always been crazy, but those are a lot easier to work on and get steady than being able to really sing well. Plus, I feel like in a band like Hail the Sun, on the live setting, when it comes to drums and vocals, out of the two, vocals are the focal point. So I really wanted to make sure those were super strong. And even like our first 3 years of touring, I still would have, I'd be super pitchy live. And I'd know that because I'd watch live videos afterwards, either that I filmed or friends had filmed. Mm-hmm. Very pitchy. And it wasn't until probably 2015 where I was like, okay, I need to get much better at this. Like right now I can pull it off and do okay. Yeah. But I fucking kill it. So I started practicing more drumming and singing, and really focusing on my breathing was a big part. I think around that time I started exercising a lot more. I exercise off the road. I do a lot of running for endurance purposes. And while I'm up on stage, I'm always keeping track of where I'm at, of where my breath's at, I guess. Mm-hmm. If I'm breathing really hard, I take it a little easy. I don't blow my whole load on the first two songs, because the biggest struggle is the breathing. As long as I have a full, I can still sing with full breaths and use a full diaphragm, then I'm good. I can really train myself to hit the high notes when I need to, and hold them out just as long as I need to. But really just concentrating more on making sure that the vocals are right on par, because the drums are at this point way second nature.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like you it's cool when you feel like you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is a reactive and instinctual as opposed to like I need to really think about it, because otherwise if you had to think about both the drums and the singing, like, you know, you would just end up being terrible at both. But like, but yeah, no, that's cool. I just was very interested in that sort of like, you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg scenario, and it's like, yeah,
right.
As that kind of builds, that's cool.
It's pretty simultaneous.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Something else, and this is more of a linguistic scene definition thing, but I'm sure that you've noticed it just because are you in your late 20s? How old are you?
Yep, 29.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, you know, most people, you know, would look at Hail the Sun and be like, oh yeah, post-hardcore, like that. You know, that's the broad definition of the term. You know, you guys, Dance Gavin Dance, you know, I the Mighty, whatever, all of those bands that kind of, you know, Circa Survive, like that exist in that whatever post-hardcore definition of what it means in the 2000s. But you know, clearly there was a prior generation of post-hardcore bands in the 90s from like Quicksand and Shift and a lot of the bands that came out of the New York hardcore scene that were like not playing hardcore. And so I mean, of course, music genres evolve, and they, you know, emo in the 90s means something different than emo in the 2000s. You know, and so like, you know, how does it, not like I'm expecting you to be like, oh yeah, like, you know, I don't like to call us post-hardcore for reasons A, B, and C or whatever. But, you know, I'm sure you've kind of looked at that and be like, well, yeah, I guess the most accurate description is post-hardcore because, you know, we kind of came out of the hardcore and punk scene, but we don't sound like that anymore. So it's like, I guess technically in certain respects, it's like the post-hardcore scene, you know, like, I just don't know if you've ever put any thought into that beyond just the fact that like, well, yeah, we're just kind of a band.
I have, yeah, I definitely have. And like you said, I would brand us as post-hardcore, but I mean, seriously, post-hardcore really makes more sense.
Right. No one wants to say that though. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If we're being accurate. I do think that we fall in that realm. We pull from so many different types of influences. Each one of us individually. John grew up playing funk and like Red Hot Chili Peppers shit was one of his favorite groups growing up. Eric comes from a jazz background as well. Same with Shane. And Shane likes a lot of those like 80s, 70s bands. I think he likes Quicksand. Yes, he likes Yes a lot. And fuck, honestly, he likes so many different types of music I couldn't even...
Yeah, you're like, I'm not even going to pretend that I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Right? But I say post-hardcore is about right. It, like with older people, I'm talking like 40 or up these days. That I mean, I just say we're a rock band, really. Like it all comes down to that. We just play rock music or progressive rock. I say that a lot more now as well. But I do like the post-hardcore branding. I know there's like this movement that I think is really cool. That swancore shit. Have you heard of that?
No, I mean, I know the fact that it's like it comes from, you know, the Dance Gavin Dance, like the was it Will Swan, right?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's Blue Swan Records,
right?
And thus the Swancore. And I feel like it's really easy to mix up that like Swancore is derivative just of Will Swan, but it's really the label and the bands the types of bands that he signs. Right. I think that's pretty cool. That's like a very small branding that we've been put in because we have an album out on Blue Swan Records.
Right.
But I think post-hardcore is the way to go for us.
Yeah, for sure. And I just find it interesting because it like the, you know, all those bands that I mentioned, I mean, you know, Circa Survive, you could definitely point at being like, you know, one of the most quote unquote successful as far as like longevity and, you know, amount of records put out and, you know, people that care about them. But then it's so bizarre to me because it's like, you know, a band like Dance Gavin Dance and you guys and, you know, even though it, you know, in many respects is, you know, commercially viable where you guys can, you know, tour and sell out many places. I mean, especially Dance Gavin where it's like, you know, you're having Billboard charting records and, you know, whatever, 10 plus years into your career.
Yeah.
But I think so many people just still completely write it off as just like, oh yeah, it's just like high singing vocals. Like, you know, it's kind of like kid stuff, you know, it's like, yeah, I guess like,
yeah.
And honestly, like I mean, me being a person who, you know, quite honestly, like I don't listen to that style of music hardly at all, but I respect it because I see where it's like, oh yeah, like clearly there's talent and clearly they're doing something not only right, but like it's awesome. But yeah, do you kind of feel that it gets kind of pushed aside where it's like, oh yeah, that's little kid stuff?
Dude, I do. I definitely do. And that's been something that has been an internal discussion of ours amongst our friends, the band I play with, myself, Sergio and Will, who run the label. And I do a lot of the booking and show and tour ideas for the label as well. We will talk about that. I think if we're going even more general, bands like Day to Remember have helped to change that, because they were a screamy band that hit such mainstream success. And while it's still very different type of like screaming and yelling and the fans are different, seeing what a band like Dance Gavin Dance is doing now, I definitely think it has potential to, as long as the new generations kind of is swapping, you know, the kids that were 20 years old 10 years ago are now 30 and are still familiar with this band and might still listen to them. So I think it's definitely possible to be not just pushed aside like that, but I definitely could be wrong, because at the same time, whenever you hear any band like just straight screaming into a microphone, not yelling, not Dave Grohl type of melodic screaming, but just screaming, then that might just be it right there, be pushed aside to this genre. But I guess the silver lining is this genre is still growing so quickly that there is huge demand for it. And I think the demand is still going up. And that's really cool to see, because that could be its own monster in itself in a few years, which I fucking love. And I've been working towards myself for the last, decade.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Cause what heartens me too, even though like I'm not a devoted follower to, that scene, is the fact that there is talent that is, as musicians, there's absolute talent there, where it's like, I think that most people that look at teenagers would be like, oh yeah, they don't listen to challenging music. It's like, yeah. And so the fact that, you guys and many of your peers are being like, we're doing like, 7/16 time structures with like, insane guitars over it with like, 75 part harmonies or whatever. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
right.
But like that there is a lot of musicianship that's tied up into it, in the same way that, your mind was blown when you listened to Alaska. The same kid that's going to, trip across a dance record or Hail the Sun record is going to be like, whoa, like, okay, I can't just be like, doing my punk power chords. Like I kind of want to do this other expressive stuff or whatever.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And I do want to say it's worth mentioning how cool it is to see a band like Chon also be fucking killing it and be so popular amongst young kids and be selling out these huge rooms with not only just instrumental music, there's no vocals for the most part, but such crazy technicality and time signatures and talent, just like you said, talent up on stage. And there's a huge demand for it, and that's very encouraging. And I love seeing that shit. I really do. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, totally. Well, the last thing I want to hit on was the fact that, you not only play, music in your band, but then you're very involved in the music industry, and like you said, you're booking a lot of bands. What motivates you, beyond just, the fact that, it can clearly, make some money beyond just the money that you make in your band, from a functional standpoint, but like, why? Cause like, are you booking and also managing bands, or how does that, walk me through what you're doing from the industry perspective?
So I actually just book.
Okay.
I'd like to have a hand in, especially a lot of the bands that I book, I have very close relationships with. In fact, some of them are my best friends. And so I do like to have a hand in managing and I'll give my opinion, but for the most part, I just book. That's what I do on paper. And I was booking Hail the Sun, our DIY tours. And then we got management, we got an agent. And I thought I still have all these connections all over the West Coast. And maybe I could try my hand at, since I don't book Gus anymore, I'll book some other bands. And that's kind of how it started. I started to book friends' bands and use those same contacts that I was using. And the tours got longer and longer, and they started to get better and better. And I started to get larger bands. And I realized, actually in college, while I was going to school for recording, my passion for recording had died. My senior year, I no longer really wanted to record anymore. And I was I was in my lecture classes and shit, just booking. I'd be zoning out, just booking tours for Hail of the Sun in my school classes. And I thought, this is what I really want to do. I want to go in the business side of things. I feel like I discovered a business state of mind I didn't realize existed my junior and senior year of college, once I gotten clean as well. And so I just kept it up. And I love to create, especially in this niche that we work in, the post-hardcore niche and bands on Equal Vision and Blue Swan Records. I love to just come up with cool ideas for tours and put together a really solid build of good music. Of course, as you know, there's so much there's a ton of logistics behind it, money, all the stuff that it takes to put a tour together. But when it comes down to it, I really do like to focus on what makes a cool tour, what makes sense for the bands I work with, that's going to bring out their fans, like make their fans want to come even more, and have them take away new fans and set them up to then possibly hit the next tier of their touring careers. I learned by doing, because I tour myself. I learn new things every day. I learn, like, as you know, the industry is kind of an open playing field right now with streaming and Spotify, and then it's like a new way to look at things. And album cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and people are trying a bunch of new things to see what works for their artists. And I'm kind of in the same boat, but I do think it still comes down to fans will pay a hard ticket price to come see music that they love. No matter how the economy is doing either, they will come out if there's enough appeal to a tour. And I try to keep that in mind at every tour I'm doing is, does this appeal to the ticket buyer that we want to target? And is it also going to help their career, or just and not be lateral or a step backwards? Yeah. Oh, no, totally. It's cool. And honestly, it's like, I mean, for close to 13, 14 years, I worked at labels. Like I worked at Century Media Records, and I also helped out with like No Sleep Records and a bunch of other nice labels. But like I remember the struggle that I had, like when I signed a band to the label, of just being like, okay, like maybe we can find a manager, which is somewhat easier, but like, dude, booking agents, like finding like you were talking about earlier, a reliable person who would like take a band and be able to like get them some shows. And it was like that you felt like there was a diamond in the rough, And so like what you're doing is definitely like, I wish I could have transported you back to, 2004 and been like, oh damn, dude, I wish I could have had you like, booking some of my bands. Cause yeah, it's hard. So you're doing the Lord's work, my friend. I truly do love it. I can do it remotely. The agency I work for, Artery Global, we just go by AG Booking. They let me live the lifestyle I want while traveling, and that's been absolutely imperative in being a part of that agency. Is of course there's other agencies out there, and they all would want me to be in town working from a desk, and that'd be tight if I didn't tour, but right. I tour, and I'm still a creator, and I have to go out. I could not see myself not performing, not touring, not writing, not making my own schedule. And Artery was just like, as long as you're producing and you're staying on top of all the work that you have, then you can pop in the office, once or twice a month, and that's fine. And that's what I do, and I fucking love it. Yeah. I love working from the road, putting together cool ideas, and just being available. That was the last thing I was going to touch on when it comes to the booking world, or just being in the industry in general. Some of the people I look up to the most in the industry, I've noticed when I first got in it, were just always available. They always responded. You could get a call back within 24 hours. I mean, usually a lot less than that. They just were, you could count on them to answer. And I really took that away. I think 50% of work is just fucking showing up and being able to answer a phone call.
Totally. For sure. It's so,
I'll get back to you.
Yeah. It is so funny that the base expectation of most people in the music industry is like, oh dude, they respond to an email. And it's like, what? Like, can we not exist in a world? And like my day job now, like I work in the podcast industry and like I deal with, like quote unquote normal people who are not like you and I. And like, even then, like, because I respond to an email in like 2 minutes, they're like, oh my God, this guy's an all-star. It's like, what the? So our problem that we like, or the thing that we see and we're responding to emails and like we're being productive, like that's respected in the outside world too, dude. So you're good to go. As long as you start responding to emails, be like, I'll get back to you. People are like, oh my God, Donovan, you're amazing.
That's fucking dope, man. It really is. It means a lot to just be able to respond, and also not. I think would my band want this? Like, am I doing enough work that if I was my band's agent right now, how would I feel about myself? And I try to always kind of check it like that because I care so much about Hail the Sun and CN Bar, obviously, that I want to make sure I'm doing the same type of like the same standard of work for the bands that I'm working with. Or else it's not mutually beneficial. I mean, and it's not even hard feelings. If I can't perform like they want, then they're better off going to find someone else. So I will really only commit these days to bands I can put my full effort behind.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. That's totally cool. Well, dude, this was exactly what I wanted it to be. So thank you for hanging out with me. This was super fun.
Dude, thank you so much, man. Seriously, Ray, I appreciate you taking the time to pick my weird brain and being able to deal with my scheduling.
There you have it. That was a great chat. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Donovan, for making it happen. And thank you very much, Rich, his publicist. We took like 7 months to set this up. It was kind of ridiculous, but we figured it out and it was fun. I was glad that it happened. Next week is a fun conversation that I just recently had with Paul Shirley, who is an ex-NBA player, a professional basketballer, and also a writer. He's written some books, and he's a journalist out there in the world. And we discussed music, and it was really, really fun because we drew some parallels between being an athlete and playing in a band. And it was just a really engaging chat. So I can't wait to bring that to you next week. That's what's happening. All right. Until then, please be safe, everybody.
You've been listening to the Jabberjaw Podcast Network, jabberjawmedia.com. Shh.
Hey, Miles.
Yes.
It's Jack from work.
Yes, hi.
Did you know that we host a daily news and culture podcast where people can go to get caught up on what is happening?
Are you confused about that? You're talking about the Daily Zeitgeist.
I just wanted to make sure you knew and that everybody knew that you could listen to us every day, twice a day, talk about what is happening, and they could learn everything without feeling the life drained from their soul.
Yeah, I think at the Daily Zeitgeist, we like to give people a balance of just enough news that they feel informed and just enough laughs that they're not overwhelmed and can have a decent day after listening.
So guys, listen to the Daily Zeitgeist on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are given away for free.
When the world gets in the way of your music, try the new Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds 2. Next-gen earbuds uniquely tuned to the shape of your ears. They use exclusive Bose technology that personalizes the audio performance to fit you, delivering the world's best noise cancellation and powerfully immersive sound, so you can hear and feel every detail of the music you love. Bose Quiet Comfort Earbuds 2. Sound shaped to you. To learn more, visit Bose.com.